A massive, brutish giant is shown eating udon noodles with chopsticks inside a rustic wooden building, while smaller figures watch from the side.
A massive black dragon, Nidhoggr, looms through storm clouds above a rocky landscape, growling ominously, while something below wheezes and gasps, noting that its presence is still felt.
Nidhoggr struggles to keep a small target in sight due to its own enormous size, huffing and puffing as the tiny opponent evades through the clouds below it.
A pale, long-haired, horned figure, smiling despite coughing and gasping, speaks with cold recognition to someone, saying it never expected to see them again in this world, while being called a traitor.
The winged, horned figure clashes mid-air with the small, dragon-like creature Nidhoggr, both trading blows high above the cloud cover in a chaotic aerial battle. The horned figure reflects that lightning was caused by an impact with ice, noting the two combatants always had a great affinity for one another, while snow begins to fall around them. A mythical squirrel creature, Hammer Ragnir, a squirrel fruit mythical model, Ice Squirrel Ratatoskr, appears explosively, and the horned figure recognizes it warmly, saying it waited frozen in time for a new master. Ragnir fires a powerful multi-arrow attack called Ragna Quint Arrow directly at Nidhoggr in a fierce exchange of blows, with the command, "Okay, let's go," signaling the counterattack. The horned figure unleashes an ability called Eclipse. A massive, dark ring covered in eyes materializes in the sky, while Nidhoggr responds with a technique called Gazing, both attacks colliding in a dramatic clash. A wide explosion panel shows the aftermath of the clash. Nidhoggr and multiple dark skull-like projectiles scatter across the battlefield in a massive burst of force and debris. Dark black waves, resembling a flood or destructive energy surge, roll violently across the landscape, while the horned figure watches from the side, the shockwave tearing through the terrain. Bonnie is shown reacting in fear to the unknown powerful figure, while a dark-armored guardian beside her tells her not to worry and declares they will not attempt to fight that entity, urging Bonnie to fall back. The Guardian explains that in an 800-year-old organization, power struggles breed deeper darkness, and reveals that the enemy is not one of the 5 elders, but is clearly the superior of the Holy Knights of God. The Holy Knight Superior taunts that he didn't even need to personally finish off Sanji, while a badly wounded Sanji tells Bonnie there is no other choice for him, pushing himself to act despite his injuries. The Holy Knight Superior declares his rippling strength and turns away, stating he is returning to his mission, kidnapping the children, as others call out in shock, asking where he is going. It is revealed he has not given up on abducting the children of Elbaf, and Sanji, mustering his last strength, blasts the Holy Knight with a devastating kick, sending him crashing away with a shout of, "So long, sucker!" Sanji, badly wounded but burning with resolve, charges forward, declaring he will keep Elbaf safe. This is the land Usopp and Luffy have been dreaming of, and he cannot let all of their battles be for nothing. The scene shifts to the Owl Library, a grand structure built into massive, ancient trees, where a hidden tunnel around the back is mentioned, amid the sounds of distant explosions still echoing. Inside the tunnel beneath the library, a large owl figure named Biblo is praised for protecting all the books from the fire, while a smaller figure discovers the tunnel ends in a hidden secret room. Inside the hidden tunnel beneath the Owl Library, a dark-haired woman thanks the group with relief, saying she thought all the books were lost, while Biblo the Owl expresses being even more perplexed than before. A ship launches with great force from the Sea Cloud port by Western Village, with a map showing the layout of Elbaf, including Western Village, Branch Route, and Rainbow Port marked with an X.
A massive full-spread panel reveals Super Sommers, an enormous elderly giant who has commandeered a spectacular giant Viking ship, bellowing into a transponder snail to bring the children to the port in 5 minutes. At the pub in Western Village, onlookers react in horror as the forest outside is consumed by a massive, dark, churning force. Someone shouting that it looks like a war scene, while the trees are swallowed by blackness and growling sounds. Chopper tends to an injured crewmate, explaining that the clean cut through the fingers means they can reattach, but warns it will take months for a full recovery, while the patient laments feeling inadequate as the one who was supposed to heal others. A chaotic but warm scene unfolds as the injured crew is treated. An ultra-rare giant named Gerd is fawned over. Chopper provides emergency care, and a giant dramatically offers all his fingers in gratitude before being flatly told, "Don't," to great comedic effect. The same giant, overflowing with excitement over his ultra-rare Gerd, causes a companion named Roto to literally squirt blood from excitement, while Gerd, smiling softly, admits that seeing the giant risk his life to protect his brother Bjorn did make her think a little better of him. Team Zoro is shown at the port side of Western Village. A giant crew member notes he is the only one on the new giant pirate ship who wasn't horribly wounded, while Zoro and Goldberg acknowledge their legs can't carry them as fast, and the giant cheerfully thanks them for helping during Elbaf's crisis. The group discusses the Holy Knight Superior's black flame, which was transforming into steel bullets and bombs, empowering the Knights of God already on the island. But a crew member reassures that their captain Luffy is the type who treats a friend's country as his own country, earning impressed acknowledgement. At Port Western Village, chaos erupts as Summers realizes in a panic that he summoned the wrong thing, shouting that he called Killingham by mistake, while the others react with alarm and disbelief at his blunder. The discussion turns urgent. Someone reports that Gunko was seen on the way, but is probably dead, while another confirms they summoned a Sleepdid and believes it can still be controlled, though others shout back furiously that now it is going to frighten everyone. 2 figures, Killingham and another, speak gravely, declaring they must not disappoint the Great One, acknowledging that both the strength they need and the strength they must destroy are present here, and ominously noting that Emu's body was never meant to withstand the outside world. The Holy Knight orders the capture of the children, while at Western Village, a sudden torrential downpour erupts out of nowhere, flooding indoors, and bystanders scramble to keep the wounded from getting soaked. The children are swept away screaming by a sudden violent surge of floodwater bursting through the village, calling out the names Colin and Ylva in panic as they are carried off by the rushing current. The Holy Knight grins menacingly, explaining that in the lower world there is a monster called the Rain God that dumps water from the sky. After the people of Dee and Nika, it was the most feared boogeyman, while a small figure from above marvels in terror that water is falling from the sky. A full dramatic splash page reveals the entity responsible, God of Rain, ZAZA, Sleeptide, an enormous, grotesque creature adorned with beads and ceremonial dress, stomping through Western Village to the rhythm of rain prayers, grasping at the terrified children as they cry for help, with bystanders screaming that it is freaky and appearing in answer to their prayers. A close vertical panel shows Zaza's massive decorated feet stomping and splashing through the flooded village streets, the shang-shang of its ceremonial bells ringing with each thunderous step as water floods everything below. The Holy Knight confirms the ship is ready to sail at any time. He orders Summers to prepare to take the children away, but then suddenly hesitates, sensing the screaming and chaos erupting from the village behind him, wondering whether to turn back. The chapter closes with 2 final exchanges, one figure shouting to get the job done right, and the horned figure snapping back, "Same to you," ending on a tense, unresolved standoff as the chapter reaches its to-be-continued cliffhanger.
Loki, the pale horned figure, gasps and declares that Ragnir has waited all this time for someone capable of bringing vengeance upon Emu. While below, Nidhoggr and Ragnir continue their fierce mid-air clash, with onlookers baffled by Loki's rambling resilience.
Loki warns that Emu will erase him, then addresses both Loki and Straw Hat Luffy directly, declaring that neither of them could ever be Emu's soldiers, framing the conflict as a fundamental incompatibility between their nature and Emu's dominion. Ragnir unleashes Ragna 2 Jin Blades against Nidhoggr, while Loki calls out the name Heim and strikes with Sword of Wrath, Gram, a massive, devastating blow that sends shockwaves tearing across the battlefield in a dramatic full-page clash. At Western Village, ZAZA the Rain God continues its catastrophic advance through the flooded streets, its massive ceremonial form looming over the collapsed buildings, while desperate voices cry out to save the children trapped in the surging floodwaters.
A chaotic, wide panel shows injured giants insisting they need blood transfusions to survive, while simultaneously refusing to stay still, defiantly shouting that they will never give up their children, with wounded warriors rising to face the threat, despite Bonnie urging them back. The Holy Knight counts only 7 children captured, and decides that will have to do, ordering ZAZA forward, as the Rain God scoops up the screaming children in its enormous hands, while Bonnie, watching from the side, declares her life means nothing to her right now, as she prepares to act. The scene shifts to the open battlefield outside the village. 2 quiet panels show the rocky terrain under rain clouds, as the horned figure mentions Brook by name, beginning to speak about that woman in a tone of grave personal weight. Brook's crewmates ask him directly whether he knows the woman, whether she is an enemy from his past, and why he was so desperate to confront her. Brook admits quietly that she is not an enemy, but someone he had hoped never to face again, saying it was supposed to stay that way, and that he is now completely lost. Brook reveals that the woman was once a princess of his home kingdom, heading to Mary Geoise, but the last time he saw her, she was departing, which should make it impossible for her to be a celestial dragon. His crewmates note she cannot be the same person, while Brook calculates that if she is who he thinks, she would be 77 years old by now. The group debates on the open hillside. Someone argues she still came to lay siege to Elbaf, regardless of her past. Another wonders if she could just be a lookalike, and they note they cannot tell if she is alive or dead. But Brook reveals she is still frozen solid nearby, her fate suspended. The captured group is suddenly freed, their restraints released without explanation, and as they realize they are untied and freed, Brook quietly reveals that she is the one who released their restraints, adding another layer of mystery to the woman's identity and intentions. Brook states with quiet shock that she seemed to recognize him, and the panel shows him calling out to her as she runs away, her figure retreating into the distance, while everyone wonders why she would free them and then flee. The group tries to make sense of her behavior, noting they witnessed 3 distinct personalities: her original self, the version that saved them, and the demon form, concluding she just snapped back into a devil, raising the question of whether she is being controlled by something or someone. A crewmate presses Brook bluntly. They cannot make a move until he decides whether she should be spared or killed, and Brook, deeply conflicted, admits he cannot reconcile the swirling feelings in his chest, noting that after seeing people turning into demons today, he would not have thought such a possibility conceivable before. The chapter flashes back 70 years ago, 4 a.m. West Blue. A lively musical kingdom fills the panels with sound and color as Brook begins recounting the story of a fallen kingdom called Esperia, a country where music flourished and instrument studios lined every street, where she was just a child and he was very young.
A full close-up panel of Brook's wide-open singing jaw fills the page as he belts out his own original song. Good maid! Waking up in the morning, it's a good maid! A new world's beginning! Capturing the infectious joy and youthful energy of his time in Esperia. The flashback expands to show the bustling streets and districts of Esperia. The port, the arena, the back alleys, all waking up to Brook's morning music, with locals shouting mixed reactions ranging from delight to demanding he be quiet, while one cheerful man greets Esperia and declares it's time to set sail again. A sweeping aerial view of Esperia Kingdom, labeled as the country of instrument makers, fills the final page, with Brook performing a grand guitar strum that sends musical shockwaves across the rooftops and into the sky. The crowd reacting with wild mixed emotions, ranging from adoration to outrage, closing the chapter on a vivid, bittersweet portrait of a kingdom that would eventually fall. The flashback deepens. Inside Esperia Palace, at the barracks, soldiers beg their captain to teach them his swift slash technique, while elsewhere, a young Brook walks through the palace gardens, humming about delivering Binks's sake, his belly growling and his mind already on dinner. A warm, full-page introduction panel reveals the two key figures of the flashback. Brook, 20 years old, raider captain of the Guard Corps of Esperia, singing joyfully about the open seas and sunshine, alongside the young Princess Shuri, 7 years old, of the Kingdom of Esperia, who laughs and asks if she got stronger today, wondering if she is becoming just like her mama. Brook is shown completely love-struck over a married woman named Lady Candel, described as the light of his life, while his crewmate dryly points out it is a bad look to fall for a married woman, and little Shuri cheerfully declares her mother is super strong, oblivious to the awkwardness. The flashback introduces King Luffy of Esperia, a massive, intimidating horned ruler in striped, prison-like clothing, who roars at Brook, accusing him of plotting to assassinate him and threatening execution for treason, while Brook panics and insists he would never, and little Shuri runs in happily shouting, "Daddy!" The comedic tension continues as Brook flatly says he has no interest in a bride with a runny nose. King Luffy is mortified, while little Shuri, completely earnest, declares she will marry Brook instead when she grows up, melting everyone in the room. The mood shifts as an interrupting figure arrives to break up the lighthearted scene. Brook declares he is a one-woman type of guy, while King Luffy erupts in fury, demanding to know who dared shoot down his daughter right in front of him, his parental rage igniting instantly. An urgent tactical scene unfolds. A map of Esperia City showing the palace, opera house, and port is laid out as advisors report that gang riders are closing in from the port. The corpsmen in the area are badly outnumbered, and the castle reinforcements won't arrive in time, leaving everyone stunned and asking who the attackers are actually after. The answer becomes clear. The Moron family has been targeting Queen Candel for years, and she is currently at the opera house in town. The palace scrambles to send word for Candel not to leave the theater under any circumstances. Brook reveals he encountered the Moron family at the harbor that very morning, and as Shuri bursts into tears, screaming that they are going to take her mama away, the palace advisor shouts in despair that all the transponder snails at the opera house are set to Do Not Disturb mode, cutting off all communication. The gang riders storm Opera Avenue in full force. A wide panel shows horseback riders tearing through the streets, gunshots ringing out, civilians scattering in panic as the Moron family's men converge on the opera house in a violent blitz. Inside the opera house, a beautiful woman finishes her performance on stage to a roaring standing ovation from a packed audience. She sighs contentedly, remarking that it was such a wonderful performance, completely unaware of the siege closing in around the building outside.
Outside the Opera House, the Morone family's men surround the grand building entirely. Their leader announces that today they will settle things once and for all, telling Candel to come out, and that Don Morone has authorized them to shoot her if she refuses, the threat delivered in cold, theatrical menace.
Back at the palace, Brook reassures the group. He says there is no chance they will catch Queen Candel, reminding them their queen is strong, while King Leuven, despite his earlier bluster, anxiously clutches his head and tells Brook not to worry about it, calling him his royal bro.
A dramatic action panel reveals Brook has already acted. He sliced down the entire gang of moron riders before anyone else could move. The street outside the Opera House littered with collapsed enemies. His signature swift slash having resolved the crisis in an instant, as everyone else reacts in stunned disbelief.
The aftermath is shown in a wide aerial view of the Opera Avenue, littered with fallen gang riders. Onlookers marvel that it was Captain Brook's swift slash, noting the enemies were already cut down before anyone realized what happened, while a figure on the side stares in bewilderment, asking what on earth just happened. The narrator scroll reveals that over 70 years ago, the Kingdom of Esperia had two massive stars. And as the queen herself steps out of the opera house to cheering crowds calling her gorgeous, Brook's legendary technique is named the three-pace hum notch slash, with the crowd erupting in adoration for Lord Brook.
The final page closes chapter 1183 with a magnificent full reveal of Queen Candel of the Kingdom of Esperia, a tall, radiant, long-haired warrior queen with a sword at her hip, smiling and remarking, "It's so lively," flanked by narrator text identifying the two stars of Esperia. One was the former commander of the Royal Guard Corps and current Queen Candel. The other was the master of the Swift Slash, captain of the Battle Raiders, Humming Brook, with a note that at this time, the kingdom was still at peace.